Hello and welcome to the JackCast, the Swansea City podcast. I am Guto and with me as usual is Steve Carroll. How are you, Steve?
I'm not bad, thanks. How are you?
Not too bad. Apologies, Matt can't join us tonight. So for all of you who enjoy our new quiz segment and the unpopular opinion and everything else that usually goes with that, unfortunately, we're going to be a little bit less fun tonight. It's just going to be plain football chat, but we do have a lot to discuss. We've got two matches that the Swans have played. We'll also be looking forward to the two games that they've got coming up. So, Steve, let's start off looking back to last Wednesday night. Seems like a long time ago now. It was a game against Sheffield Wednesday, a game which we were quite confident about going into the match, but I think it turned out to be a little bit trickier than possibly we'd anticipated.
Yeah, it did really, didn't it? The first half, especially, we've got to admit that we were pretty poor. I mean, we didn't create a lot. We didn't seem to keep the ball very well. And if we're honest, Sheffield Wednesday probably did a bit of a number on us, really, didn't they? I mean, they created a few chances. They scored from like a nice corner routine, but you can pick holes in that. Was it Barry Bannon? Was it that scored?
I think it was what's his name? Adam Reach who scored.
Adam Reach, yeah, that's right. Well, he was completely unmarked, wasn't he? So when you look at it like that, you're just thinking, well, come on, this is fairly basic stuff. I mean, you've got to track runners at set pieces, and we didn't do that, and we paid a price for it. But if we're honest, I think we probably deserve to be losing at the break. Really, I'd say it was probably our worst first half of the season. I'm not sure what you thought.
Possibly. I mean, Coventry away wasn't great either, but we at least, we did score against Coventry and we did look much more creative. I mean, the closest we came to scoring in that first half against Wednesday was Liam Cullen's cross come shot, which wasn't too far off catching out the keeper. But all it achieved really was ending up injuring their keeper. But I mean, for the entire first half, I mean, you're right in saying Wednesday did a number on us. It was a very good Tony Pulis performance, really. They were extremely organised. They allowed us to have the ball in our own half, but as soon as we kind of approached their final third, suddenly they switched on and they just suffocated our attack. I mean, Lowe and Cullen, you could barely notice that they were on the pitch because we just couldn't get the ball into them. And with only two really proper midfielders then in Grimes and Corey Smith on the pitch. I don't know about you, Steve, but I thought midfield looked quite stretched because they just didn't have any options to pass to, and they ended up slowing the game down, making mistakes. I thought Grimes, throughout the night didn't have his best game, but he looked frustrated and panicky, and it affected his decision making, and that was all down to Wednesday's tactics, in my opinion. You have to give credit to the opposition. I thought they set up perfectly to play against us and really nullified our attack in that first half.
Yeah, they definitely did. I mean, they frustrated us a lot. It's probably one of the best. Obviously, I've said already, how poor we were really, but it was probably one of the better sides we've come up against, certainly after Liberty, and that was quite a surprise because obviously we did stick the boot into Sheffield Wednesday. Really, I mean, you reeled off some of those stats about how they've, they were really struggling for goals, and obviously they're towards the wrong end of the table. Although of course they're only in the bottom three because of the points deduction that they suffered. But no, they did well. You've got to say they look like a team now that may be under Tony Pulis, which is what he's always been good at. Will frustrate teams and keep things tight, and that's what we sort of saw from them. But I did think at halftime, because they had that goal and they had something to hang on to, I never really believed they were going to go for the juggler in the second half and look for a second. So that did give me a little bit of confidence that we would come back into it. And then the fact that Andre Ayew came on after the break definitely was, I think, gave all of us a little bit of a bit more confidence, should we say. And obviously then he came up trumps for us, didn't he, with a brilliant goal.
It really was. I mean, before going on to the goal, I'll take issue with you saying that Wednesday were one of the better teams we played against. I think defensively, that was possibly the best performance we've seen from a team playing against the Swans. I would say, though, that in attack, they weren't great. I mean, they scored their goal from a really well-worked set piece. So, credit them for that. It was a really well-worked goal. But apart from that, I mean, I can't remember them creating their own chances. They had that one chance before that, which Cabango messed up his clearance and played it straight to one of the Wednesday players. But the shot was straight at Woodman. But apart from that, I can't really remember Wednesday looking like scoring too often, if I'm being honest.
Yeah, I'd agree with that, but I think, like I say, it was more meant in a sort of a defensive type of way, because they really did nullify us, didn't they? We did not look like scoring in the slightest.
No, and it looked like it was going to take a moment of magic to score, and that's exactly what we got. Because I mean, Andre Ayew doing something that not many players at this level would do, really. I mean, picked up the ball. It had a crowd of players in front of him, and just his maturity and his kind of footballing brain in action there, just managed to shake off the defender. And he was patient. I mean, he tried one time, tried to go the other, and worked that opportunity by shifting the defender back and forth, and then working it onto his left foot and just curling it into that corner. It was a fantastic piece of individual skill by Ayew. And sometimes that kind of side of his game where he kind of takes those extra touches, shifts back and forth a couple of times, a lot of the time that can be quite frustrating, actually, because it means he's wasted an opportunity. If he'd just taken the shot on earlier, then he would have had a better chance of scoring. But on this occasion, it really worked. And it's one of the best goals that we've scored so far this season, I say, Steve. And it was the kind of moment of magic that we really needed at that point.
Yeah, I would. I definitely agree with that, because, as you say, we've been struggling, and they were always going to be difficult to break down, really. So you're looking then maybe for a mistake from the opposition that's going to let you in, which didn't seem likely. A refereeing decision, maybe, which we will go on to discuss. Or then a moment of magic. And as you say, we got that moment of magic, really, where he's twisting and turning. The defenders really couldn't tell where he's going to go. And then in the end, obviously, he's unleashed a great shot into the bottom corner. The keeper can't really do anything with it. So, yeah, it was a great goal, and what we needed, really, wasn't it? Because, the longer the game goes on, you could have seen maybe more frustration, and obviously the opposition would have gained in confidence. So it was good, really, that we got that goal. I think it was, there was still a reasonable amount of time left as well then, wasn't there, to try and get a winner.
Yeah, and not much really happened in the final stage of the game. The Swans had the better of the play. They did create the better of the opportunities, but there wasn't really a clear-cut opportunity until added time, which you have hinted at. So let's get to it. I mean, this has really caused a stir. Swans had a corner in the final minute of the game. The box absolutely packed with players. Cross went in, and chaos ensued, and nobody could quite see what was going on. And I think it's fair to say, Steve, the ref didn't really know what was going on either.
No, he definitely did not know what was going on. He seemed to blow, obviously, far too early, but he's blown well before, obviously, the ball has gone in the net. But still a bit of a mystery, really, as to what he has blown for. I mean, it just seemed like he was guessing, in my view, and you can't do that in that situation. I mean, it was just 6-1 after, and there was nothing going on. Palmer scored an absolutely brilliant overhead kick, and obviously would have won us the game. Nobody's complained or anything. You could see Pulis's face; he thinks it's a goal. And yeah, well, what else can you say? But Cooper's comments were pretty staggering, I must admit. He probably went a little bit too far, and I'd be very surprised if there's not a ban for that.
I haven't heard anything about that since he made his comments. I don't know if there's a backlog at the FA or something, but we'll get on to the comments. But I actually haven't heard any kind of hint that he's going to be charged or anything, which is surprising.
Yeah, because, I mean, he said he's got a personal issue with us. I mean, you can't say that about a referee and not take a punishment usually. And it's an incredibly strong thing to say, isn't it? It might be the strongest thing I've ever heard from a Swans manager. I know Gary Monk stuck his boot in a few times over referees, and rightly so, to be honest with you. But yeah, I mean, you can't really go dictating either, because he'd complained, didn't he, before the game about the ref, saying we shouldn't have him. I think you can't really dictate who you can and can't have, can you?
No, exactly. I mean, he's trying to, throw his weight around there, and I don't think the referee's performance on the whole was, anything remarkable, and nothing of note. But I mean, he just panicked. I think in the final minutes, he was thinking, "Oh God, something is going to happen here, and I'm going to have to make a decision." And the easy decision in that situation is to give a free kick to Wednesday. Now, I'll be honest. My first reaction was that he'd given it for the high boot by Palmer, which I would have actually understood, because as much as it frustrates us, you do usually see those given as free kicks when there is a high boot in the box, even for an overhead kick, and there is a head anywhere near that ball, as was the case with that effort. The referee will usually blow for a free kick. But the weird thing is that the whistle had already been blown when you look at the replays before Palmer even attempts it. So he thinks he's seen something, and I cannot work out what it is. I mean, there is a potential handball in there for Patterson, which I think would have been quite harsh. There's a possibility of a handball by IU, but I mean, I'm really clutching at straws there, trying to give the referee the benefit of the doubt, because I think it's very difficult to see any kind of handball from IU there, but maybe there is in that mad cluster. There's a potential high boot in there as well by Wednesday. I mean, there are all sorts of stuff going on there. But for me, the only thing in there that looked like a clear foul was Palmer's overhead kick, which counted for nothing in the end because the whistle had already gone. I just think it's a referee looking for an easy way out to avoid having to avoid scrutiny, really, in the dying seconds of a tightly contested game. That's how I saw it. I don't think it was very brave refereeing at all. I thought the Swans players' reaction spoke volumes. Really, they were aghast at what had happened. And well, it's not the first time this season that that kind of thing has happened, where the players have really become frustrated with a strange decision by the referee late on in the game.
No, it isn't. I mean, the Bristol City one springs to mind, doesn't it? Where they've got what looks like a very soft penalty, and it's cost us, and obviously that was pretty much the last kick the other day, wasn't it, against Sheffield Wednesday? So again, it's cost us 2 points, and you just, on the balance of play, I'd probably say that a draw was fair, but I mean, it's not really the point, is it? I mean, if you score what you think is a perfectly good goal at the end and it gets ruled out, then it's mad, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, you're right there to point out, because we shouldn't pretend that the Swans deserved any more than a point. I thought the point was the correct result. Sheffield Wednesday, like we've said, have got their tactics spot on, and they were very organised and hardworking. The Swans weren't at their best, but they were the ones who created the most chances. So I thought 1-1 was a pretty fair reflection of the game, really. A very tight contest, in which both teams, neither team really did enough to win the game for me. But obviously, looking back, the Swans could have scored a winning goal right at the end, and it's a winning goal that would have put us, I think, joint top by this stage. So yeah, it's an annoying one, but it does make it easier to take that actually we probably deserve the point more than anything else. Let's talk about Cooper's comments, because it surprised me. It really did. Not least because Steve Cooper is the son of a former professional referee. So, you would have thought that questioning the integrity of a referee was in that way is something that he wouldn't do as a matter of principle, really. But he went there, and he went there in a big way, Steve.
Well, yeah, that's the thing, isn't it? As you say, I mean, his father was a very high-profile referee, so you'd think he maybe would be a little bit more sympathetic than most. But no, I mean, to call into question a referee's integrity is pretty staggering, really. I mean, if it was Mike Dean, obviously I'd be supportive all the way, but I'm not so sure on this guy, really. It would be an amazement if there's not a real punishment for it, wouldn't there? You don't usually get away with those comments. And as you've said, though, not much has been said at this stage, so
who knows?
I don't know.
He may get a lucky escape, but I would be surprised. I mean, the FA should really be punishing managers for those kind of comments, really. But well, I mean, why did he specifically feel that this referee was out to get us? Because I mean, what he's refereed us quite a few times now. I mean, I have to be honest, I can't remember any matches where he has stood out as being really, really bad and has really cost us, unless I'm forgetting something.
Well, I looked at some of the games he refed us. I think one was we beat Birmingham 3-0 last season. Well,
Nice.
Quite a straightforward game.
Yeah.
QPR 0-0 on a Tuesday night. The main thing I remember about that game was just how bad it was.
Yeah, I can't actually remember anything from that game because I have blocked it out of my mind. It was so bad. Probably the most boring game of last season, and there is some competition for that. I
think it was the worst.
What was that?
I was going to say I think it was the worst, in terms of boring last season, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Apparently we should have had a penalty on that game. I don't remember.
I can't remember.
Similar to you.
Yeah.
No. The other one I remember is Luton at home. Now, I remember Garrett got sent off. From what I remember, I think that was the correct decision because he lashed out at somebody. But I remember there was a nasty challenge before that, which he didn't blow for. And I think there was another one after it, and then he blew for that. And then it ended up being a brawl. And I do think with that, he did contribute to the brawl because he didn't stamp out on the initial challenge, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So I do think in that moment, he was wrong, and his refereeing did contribute to what ended up happening.
Yeah, I mean, but that's, I mean, yeah, I agree with you. I remember the incident. He did lose control of that game by not clamping down on the fouls when they started getting a bit wild. But that's something quite small for me. And the red card for Garrick was totally deserved. I don't think anybody could argue with that. Garrick he lost his mind, he lost his head. I mean, is that really, justifying?
I don't think it warrants those comments.
No, I think we've had far worse refereeing performances than that one. Far, far worse, if I'm being honest. It says a lot that, we tend to remember the worst referees, and I couldn't remember him. And even after the Luton game, I think I think we all commented that, he should have blown early and he would have avoided the whole melee that followed. But I don't think anybody was saying, the referee cost us that game or anything like that. It was one moment of questionable refereeing, really. So yeah,
if you're going to call out a ref for having a grudge, just make sure it's Mike Dean, because I'll accept that then.
Yeah.
But, a lot of the others, like Stuart Atwell, was a very bad one. We've had a few times, wasn't he? He's one I just thought was completely useless. I think, obviously, Bobby Madley, I think, stitched us up a couple of times, didn't he?
Yeah, I mean, we just looking back last season, I don't know who refereed us against Fulham away, but that was a much worse refereeing performance than anything we've seen.
Him. I forgot his name now. But yeah, he was a complete moron.
Yeah, we've had Keith Stroud do for a couple of games as well, where he's done a few really really bad decisions which have gone against us. But I think with Keith Stroud, you have to accept that he's going to give bad decisions to both sides. So he is an equal opportunities offender, really. But yeah, I'll be honest, I was surprised by Cooper's comments. Because I don't really see, unless there's something that we do not know about that's gone on behind the scenes, I don't really see what this referee has done, which is so heinously bad that it merited those comments. But there we go. And the end result is a 1-1 draw for the Swans, which was, I think, a little bit disappointing considering our expectations beforehand. But looking at the performance, I don't think we could really have many complaints. We'll move on now to Sunday's game, Steve, which had a happier outcome. I don't think it was a vastly improved performance, I'll be honest. I thought we were defensively very good against Nottingham Forest, though.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I mean, when I first saw the team, I was thinking, here we go. We're, where it's pretty obvious what our mindset is going to be. And although we did go there to win, apparently, according to Cooper, I'm not sure I'm quite buying that as such with that selection. And by the way, really, even by the way that the game panned out, because I mean, if you look at it in the first half, we didn't really do a lot, did we? I mean, they didn't either. They were probably marginally better than us, apart from that knockout chance though, where he's cut in and shot and it's gone straight at Woodman. He saved with his legs. They didn't have a shot on target in the whole game, did they? Which I suppose again, it does show how how well we did, and obviously having Mark Gray back wouldn't have done us any harm in that sense. But we didn't really threaten a lot going forward ourselves, did we?
No, we didn't. Just talking about that team selection, because it did get a bit of a reaction on social media when it was announced that we were going back to the three in midfield with Grimes, Fulton, and Smith there. It's something which people have complained about in the past. Personally, I can understand the thinking behind it, because we were quite weak in midfield against Middlesbrough, and I mean, Forest were going to pack the midfield with players. They usually play a variation of 4-5-1. So you'd expect, the midfield to be quite congested, and you want that extra man in there. I get that. But still, for me, I was looking at that and thinking, we're going to struggle to create if we don't have a number 10. We're still not exactly free scoring this season. We haven't scored more than 2 goals in any game this season. We tend to win games by 1 goal, as was the case on Sunday. And I just think when we don't have a number 10 in the side, that it makes quite a drastic difference to our attack. So even though we lose that that kind of commanding presence in midfield, which you get by putting an extra defensive midfielder in there, what you lose in creativity is quite substantial, I think.
Yeah, there's no 2 ways on that for me. Because I thought then, as soon as we did get that goal, you're thinking, well, okay, what subs are we sort of going to make now? Because you're not going to bring on Palmer and Danda in that situation, are you? So, you can say that it did work, but we're probably a little bit lucky. I mean, we'll get on to the goal, I'm sure. I mean, it's a ridiculous leap, isn't it, by Colin Roberts from what is, it's barely half a chance even, really, is it? I mean, nobody else probably would have scored that. I know Andre Ayew's got a big leap at him, but I don't think he would have reached that, for example. So, I mean, I think it is frustrating when we do become that bit more cautious, because, I mean, I don't think there's a great deal to fear in this division. So we should be thinking about what we can do to the opposition, really, as opposed to being scared of them, because Forest have hardly pulled up any trees this season, have they? I mean, there's a reason they've changed their manager, and there's a reason why they're down towards the bottom of the division. So, I just think it was a negative selection, and the likes of Danda, to be fair, has done very well recently. So I think he was unlucky to be dropped. I think Palmer has had his moments, probably doesn't deserve to play as much as Danda does, but yeah, when you don't pick one of those two, it just, it gives the impression that the first thought is we want to make sure we keep things tight no matter what. And then obviously we'll look to take a chance if we can, but if not, it doesn't matter. But yeah, I think we could have caused them more problems if one of them had played. Obviously we've had the result, haven't we? So, Cooper will turn around and say that, but I was disappointed with the selection, and I do think the game sort of panned out then in that way as well.
Before we go on to the goal, what's going on with Palmer? Because for me, I thought Sunday's game was actually one which may have suited him, because he is more physical than Danda. I can understand not playing Danda against a team like Forest, who are going to sit deep, and they're going to have a lot of bodies in midfield, and you've got a player there like Jack Colback, who isn't very good, but he'll chuck in a few tackles. I thought perhaps it was a game for Palmer. He is a bit more physical. He can handle himself. He's more prepared than Danda to put a foot in and get a tackle in. I thought maybe it was a game for Palmer. And I saw another story today saying that Palmer was looking to move permanently to the Swans. And I just don't know really what he's getting out of it, because he's still a bit part player. He looks good whenever he comes on. I mean, maybe not setting the world alight, but he looks decent. But I just wonder, Danda seems ahead of him for most games these days. And, even when Danda is dropped, it's for another central midfielder, it's for an extra presence in the deeper role rather than bringing on Palmer to be a bit more attacking. I mean, do you think we're going to see a bit more of him over the coming weeks / months, or is this the role that he is going to have as a substitute coming on every now and again for the last 20 minutes, half an hour?
Well, if anything, it's going to get worse, isn't it? Because when Morgan Gibbs White returns to fitness, I'd be very surprised if he isn't back in the side. So, I think Palmer had better get used to it. Yeah, he can say that he wants to stay here, which is good. I'm not complaining about that, but I mean, it's going to be difficult for him to get regular game time, isn't it? He's going to be on the bench more often than not, and there's a part of me that does think as well. Obviously, his loan I think can be ended in January if Gibbs White is back. I mean, are we going to look at it from the point of view of obviously that would free up a loan that we don't
Mhm.
have at the moment in terms of obviously 5 can play, and obviously we got 5 that are here. So would we be looking thinking, well, if we could send him back because we don't need him, could we then get a striker, for example, who might be available that could
Yeah.
make the difference? So yeah, I'm not so sure for Palmer. I do actually like him.
Yeah.
I wouldn't be against him staying in terms of what he's done, but I just think he might be a little bit unlucky because obviously Gibbs White is an excellent player at this level, and it'd be very difficult to leave him out when he's fit. And Dander has probably come on a little bit more than what we were expecting. So when you think of it like that, it's going to be difficult for Palmer, really, isn't it?
Yeah, it is a strange one with him because I don't think he's done badly when he's come on, but yeah, just where is his role? But well, from one player who we don't see much of to a player that just does not stop. Let's get on to Connor Roberts' goal, specifically his goal. We'll talk about his general performance, which was again fantastic. After we've discussed the goal, Steve, Connor Roberts is 5'9". Sammy Amiobi at the back post is 6'4". How did he win the header and win it pretty comfortably?
I remember on a few of the Wales games, Chris Waithan has taken like photos of Connor Roberts, and it always seems to be that he's got a massive like leap on him when he's celebrating a goal. So now obviously we've seen him put that leap to good use, really, isn't it? He should not be out jumping someone who's that much taller than him. Should Yami be just obviously didn't know he was there, I suppose. But I mean, it is an absolute beast of a leap. It's I think I did put on my Twitter the photo. There's a great photo, isn't there? I don't know who took it, whoever it was. Credit to him. I just put the caption of Cristiano Roberts, and that basically is what it is, isn't it? Because it is a ridiculous jump, and it is Ronaldo-esque. There's not many players like that have just got this like crazy jump where they can head the ball at a level where nobody else can get near to. And obviously, if you can do that, then it's a big advantage, isn't it? But yeah, it
I
was
don't know.
ridiculous, really.
I don't know how people can do it. I mean, okay, I'm not quite as fit as Connor Roberts, admittedly, but when I try to jump, even with a run, I maybe get a foot off the floor, and you see Connor Roberts, who is roughly the same height as me. I mean, he could jump over me quite easily. He is just a phenomenal athlete, and it's not just in the goal where we saw that, where he was brave, really committed, and executed perfectly, because he could have fouled Amiobi quite easily as well, jumping too early, etc., riding on his back. But he executed perfectly, and that decided the game. But his general performance against Forest was so high energy, so committed, so creative as well. He's making fantastic runs in attack, one of our biggest attacking weapons at the moment. But he's like that every single game. I just don't understand how he does it, especially this season when the fixtures are just coming so thick and fast.
Yeah, to be fair, he's always been one of these like really high energy players, isn't he? You get the feeling that he could play another game probably after one is finished, and it's obviously it's even more impressive at the moment, isn't it? Because of how hectic the schedule is. I mean, he's got to be one of the fittest, like naturally fittest players that we've had. I can't think of many others. I remember Darren Pratley a few times looking at him and thinking he could probably carry on for a while yet after playing
Darren
like
Pratley didn't have the kind of you rarely saw Darren Pratley put in as many like sprints as Connor Roberts does. Connor Roberts seemingly only has one pace. Pratley could slow things down a bit and take away control. Connor Roberts does everything at 1,000,000 miles an hour.
Yeah, you are right. I was just thinking of someone off the top of my head who was sort of similar in terms of their fitness, if that makes sense. Who always looked like they could carry on and they wouldn't really tire. Yeah, Roberts, it is it is something that he's got, and you'd look at it and like some players maybe you'd want to take off in the second half just to maybe protect them or anything like that. You'd never ever look at him, would you, and think, oh, we'll take him off now, a bit of fresh legs will do us good, because you wouldn't want to lose that like type of energy that he brings to the team. So yeah, at the moment he's one of our best players for sure. And obviously when you can do what he did yesterday and win us the game, it's the icing on the cake, really, isn't it?
Yeah, for me, he was our man of the match. Okay, wasn't there were too many competitors, but I thought he was fantastic defensively as well, very solid. And he's just we've spoken a lot about Bidwell's improvement since we've shifted to five at the back, but I think the last two games in particular, we've seen Connor. I mean, he's been much better ever since we shifted five at the back. But last two games, I think we've seen possibly the best of Connor Roberts. We've seen him reach levels which we haven't seen before, even under Graham Potter, when the first half of that season he was absolutely sensational. And the question, I guess, is can he sustain it? Because I mean, he is incredibly fit. He does keep going and going and going. But we saw in that in his first season as a regular, then under Potter, I think the second half of the season he did slow down a bit. He wasn't able to maintain that energy throughout the season. I just hope, Steve, that we're not going to see a similar kind of downturn this year, because I mean, if he can keep going, but if he can keep going the way he is, I mean, what a weapon he is going to be when everybody else is slowing down.
Yeah, definitely. It is the schedule is so relentless, isn't it? So it is concerning in some ways. Someone like him could burn out. But the good thing is, to be fair, because we did strengthen the squad a fair bit, we do have these rotation options now. So it's going to be interesting to see how things pan out with that, how often we are going to rotate. Because when you look at someone like Ryan Manning now, who hasn't had much of a chance, and you've got to start thinking, well, maybe he deserves one now in the next couple of games, just to give someone like Bidwell a rest. So, yeah, I think with Roberts, he is going to be a big weapon for us, because, I mean, everyone's going to suffer with this tiredness, and if he doesn't, which it wouldn't surprise me if he doesn't, although he may not be quite as superhuman as we think he is at the moment. But yeah, it's definitely going to become more of a thing where the sides with the bigger squads are likely to do better as the season goes on. It's not a massive shock to me when you've looked at the top two in recent weeks. Norwich and Bournemouth have been in there, and obviously Watford are in there as well. So those relegated sides probably are an advantage in that sense. So, for us to keep in there with them as we are at the moment is pretty good, to be fair.
Yeah, absolutely. And just looking at the table now, fourth in the league after 14 games. Just at 2 points off Norwich, a point behind Bournemouth, level on points with Watford. The three relegated teams who we've spoken about it before. They've got a big advantage this season compared to previous seasons, even because of the situation and the kind of the squad depth that they've got, which is so much greater than most other teams. But it is a fantastic start to the season, and one that I don't think any of us actually expected, Steve. I mean, it's fair play to Cooper. And one thing I was going to bring up, I mean, the games against Wednesday and Forest, I guess, considering our league position, 4 points, it's a decent return. It's probably what we expect from a team fourth in the division. We have seen performances drop a little bit for those games. It's not been as entertaining to watch, which after a string of games which have been very, very entertaining to watch. Are you in any way concerned that maybe we're struggling to sustain the kind of attacking and creative play that we saw in the before the international break?
Possibly. I mean, if you look at Sheffield Wednesday, for example, excuse me. Sorry about that. AU obviously didn't start, so that was not gonna. Obviously, we're not going to be as strong as we have been there, maybe. And then, obviously, if you look at Forest game, when you do play with those, three defensive-minded players, then again, you're not going to create as much. So, I do think the selection may well have played a part in it. So I'm not overly concerned. Obviously, if the next couple of games go in the same way, then it might be a little bit more concerning. But at this stage, I don't think so. hugely. I mean, and you're not going to play well in every game. I mean, I was watching the Sheffield Wednesday game with my father, and he was livid, like at how bad we were in that first half. But I was fairly calm because I was thinking to myself, well, you're probably going to come on. We're only 1-0 down. You know, we're still a reasonable chance of getting back into it, and obviously our best player was going to come on. So, yeah, I'm not overly concerned. There's definitely been a drop off. I wouldn't argue with you on that one, but I don't think I'm too concerned just yet. What about you?
Yeah, I agree with you. I think we've got to be patient this season just because of the fixture congestion. I don't think we're going to be able to play top class football every single week. That's never the case in the Championship, really, unless you're kind of last season's Leeds United, for example, where, yeah, pretty much every week they were the better team and they were playing very good football. I mean, most teams just aren't going to be able to sustain that. And we've even seen that from the relegated teams who are ahead of us at the moment in the table. They're not playing brilliantly every single week, you know. But on those weeks where, you know, it's a bit more of a slog, it's great that we can actually grind out results, and I think we've shown this season that we can do it both ways. And one more point, by the way, looking at the table, I think we are the lowest. We've got the best defense in the entire division so far this season. I think it's 8 goals conceded in our opening 14 games. That's pretty damn impressive, isn't it, Steve? I mean, at the start of the season, we said we thought we had possibly the best defense in the league on paper. And we're seeing it on the pitch now, aren't we?
Yeah, obviously we have had to adapt because obviously we had Joe Rodon who's gone, and we've replaced him well with Ryan Bennett. So it doesn't seem to have caused us too many issues really at the moment, does it? So yeah, we are hard to score against. I mean, you look at, I know we've discussed Quay previously, haven't we? And you know, the turnaround with him has been huge. He's got to be one of the best centre halves in the league now, for example. So yeah, we can't complain at all. I mean, it is difficult to beat us. There's no two ways about it. I mean, obviously Huddersfield have scored twice against us, but I don't think anybody else has. And obviously we've kept clean sheets in half our games. If you do that, then obviously you're going to be tough to beat, aren't you? You're going to end up having a good chance of winning. And in most games, we have managed to find a goal. There haven't been many that we haven't scored in either. So we've got to be, you know, pretty pleased with how things are going. I think we all would have definitely taken this. You could, you know, obviously Brewster didn't stay, so that was going to be a bit of a loss. Gallagher didn't come back in, and then, you know, we did sign a couple of players, which did give us some hope. But I don't think anyone was expecting us to be in the position that we are right now in the table. I mean, I was thinking more we'd be in the middle somewhere. So to see us quite, you know, in those playoff places, and not far off the top of the division is very encouraging, really. And the fact that we've only lost twice we've lost, haven't we? You know, if you put that over a season, you are going to be in the top 6. There's you know, pretty comfortably, I would say. So yeah, it's so far so good, and 7 points from the 3 games after the international break. I think that's a good return. I don't think we can complain at that. I know the fixtures were, you know, they weren't especially tricky on paper, but you know, to win all 3 would have been excellent. So, you know, 2 wins and a draw. That's probably what I would have expected. And if we were serious about trying to stay where we are, and you know, that's what we got.
Yep. Well, we'll go on to our upcoming games in a bit, but there's one little issue that we want to discuss before that, and that's the FA Cup draw, which was conducted just before we recorded this pod. And it's a bit of a new one, Steve. We've been drawn away to Stevenage. So it's a ground that a lot of fans have never been to. But unfortunately, Steve, it's a ground that none of us are likely to be able to go to, which is a shame because this really does feel like a proper cup tie, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. I've seen it. I have tweeted about it saying that I'm quite disappointed really that we can't go. I've had a few people reply saying that they were there for an LDV Vans game in 2002-03. I do remember it actually, but we lost 2-1. I can't imagine how miserable that would have been because that was obviously the season that we nearly went out of the league as well. So yeah, just adding that in there would have just made it worse. And obviously they were in the conference at the time, so yeah, we got dumped out by a side from non-league, which is not great, should we say. We did play him in the FA Cup as well once, didn't we? I remember under Brian Flynn the year after, where we had that memorable run to the 5th round, wasn't it? That was great.
Those
if
are
you look back on.
Sorry, I was just going to say those are the only 2 times that we've played Stevenage. So, but both games finished 2-1, but going, both results being going 1 to either side. But yeah, it's a club that's quite new to league football on the whole, really, and it's one that we aren't familiar with, really. Let's face it.
No, not at all. And obviously, they could have gone out of the league last year, couldn't they? They were not far off it. I think, were they bottom?
No, I think
Macclesfield had their issues.
Yeah, I think that they actually finished the season, but in the bottom 2. But because, of course, I think it was partly because Bury had gone bust.
Yeah, because I think they were 23rd, weren't they?
Yeah.
Obviously, they were only. Oh no, sorry, they were 24th.
I think they were 24th, but obviously there was only one team that was to be relegated to the championship, to the conference last season. Well, the other spot then, of course, was up for grabs. But so Stevenage did actually finish bottom of the table, but Macclesfield had their issues and they went out of existence, and Stevenage were given a reprieve, and they are, well, I don't know how much good it's done them, because they're still 21st in the table now, and they're level with Scunthorpe, with 23rd. So it's another real slog for Stevenage, which shouldn't surprise anybody, really. So it's going to take a bit of a feat for them to stay up. Obviously, we'll look ahead to the game in more detail closer to the date. But on the face of it, Steve, and obviously touching wood right now, it's a game that gives us a realistic chance of getting through to the 4th round, doesn't it?
You would think so, but I hope that when the game does come round, that the words Newport County get mentioned, because that was undoubtedly the worst we have played this season against a side who are 2 divisions below us. So I think they should do well to remember that little fact.
Absolutely, and Stevenage are a club as well who've got a history in the FA Cup. I think they knocked out Newcastle a couple of years back, if I remember
right.
They did. So they have got a bit of a history in the FA Cup, although it is worth pointing out they've been pretty awful this season. But I mean, how much should we be focusing on the FA Cup this season? It's a question we ask every year, but at the moment we've got our eyes on promotion. That's the main aim. Is it easier to just kind of not take the FA Cup too seriously and focus entirely on the league, or would it be in our interests to actually invest a lot of effort into it and try to go on a run?
We'd have to say the league is the priority, given what our situation is like at the moment. But I mean, I think we're all greedy as football fans. I'd quite like both. So yeah, I'd go there. I wouldn't play like a full team. I would make some changes, but even with making changes, you'd expect us to come through it, wouldn't you? So yeah, I mean, if we can get through, and then say now we end up drawing one of the bigger sides, probably going to go out, and that's fine then, because you don't really want to be on the wrong end of an upset, do you? It's not the best feeling. It can be a bit of a kick in the bollocks, and obviously sometimes it doesn't do good for confidence either. So I mean, it'd be ideal if we probably beat them and then drew, I don't know, an Aston Villa or something like that, and ended up going out, and there'd be no, everyone would just go, oh, okay, well, we lost to a Prem team, that's fine, and sort of move on, really. But it is a bit strange, isn't it, with the Cup this year? I mean, you're looking at the draw and thinking, like, Marine have drawn Tottenham, haven't they? And you just think that is an unbelievable draw. But will they be allowed fans in? Because obviously they're so low down the pyramid that obviously at a certain level you are allowed them in. So I'm thinking, will they actually be able to have like a decent crowd, if that makes sense?
You'd hope that they'd be able to get, some kind of decent crowd in there. And I don't know what Marine, I think, is Marine on Merseyside? Am I making that up?
Yeah, it's up there somewhere.
Yeah, I thought there was. I mean, I think Liverpool's in tier 2 at the moment, isn't it? So that would be 2,000 fans. So you'd think 2,000 fans in Marine, that may not be too bad then. You may be able to get a decent attendance in there. And the good thing,
even old 2,000 though.
Well,
Like, have you seen how small it is? It's unbelievable.
well, there we go. I mean, that could actually really work out for them. And the good thing with a club like Marine as well is they're going to have barely any season ticket holders, so none of the proper die-hard fans are going to miss out on a ticket for this match. You'd imagine the people who really should be there are all going to be there. You'd hope, as long as, of course, COVID permitting. But I mean, it would be devastating if COVID, I mean, prevented those fans from being there for their club's biggest ever match. You'd probably say. I mean, the chance.
Well, they'll never play a bigger game than that, will they?
No, I mean the chance to play against Spurs, especially since they're riding so high at the moment. What a cup tie that should be, and it's just a shame that it's likely to be affected in some way at least by the pandemic and not really feel as great as it should do. But it's such a shame because it's a great cup tie and it should be a massive occasion for Marine, and in all likelihood it's not going to be quite the occasion that they'd like it to be, but hopefully they can still get a real level of enjoyment out of it, and hopefully the same goes for the Swans match against Stevenage, even though we're in the opposite position of trying to avoid a cup upset. But we'll leave further discussion about the FA Cup until the start of January, when that beautiful third round weekend comes up again. We'll move over now to discuss the match on Wednesday against Middlesbrough and a clash against an old friend of ours, Steve, Mr. Neil Warnock.
Yeah, he's never going to retire, is he? That's what you get the impression with Warnock. I remember he went to Crystal Palace in 2007 or something. He said, "Oh, this is going to be my last job," and you just think he must have had about 5 jobs since then. So, yeah, what the hell he's gone up there for at this time of life, I have no idea, because he lives down in Cornwall, doesn't he? So, yeah, I am a bit surprised he ended up there, really, or certainly that he ended up staying beyond last season. But to be fair to him, he always seems to do a job at this level, doesn't he? It does seem to sort of suit him. Obviously, with the first game after the lockdown for us was against Middlesbrough, wasn't it? And for being honest, they were pretty shocking, and we ended up winning comfortably. And but it's not been like that for them this season. They've obviously they're not far from us in the table, so it's been quite a turnaround. And it does seem to be that Warnock can inspire sides at this level, can't he?
How does he do it? Because it's been proven he's not good enough for the Premier League. He's taken so many clubs up and it's just not worked out. But at Championship level, he can genuinely take a team in Middlesbrough, which looked like no hopers last season. I thought they were at real risk of going down. Their squad didn't look particularly strong. A lot of youngsters there who didn't seem up to it. Very low confidence. And suddenly he's got them up, challenging for a playoff spot. And a lot of these youngsters who look totally out of their depth under Jonathan Woodgate are now expressing themselves and looking like decent players under Neil Warnock, which actually isn't what you'd expect Neil Warnock to do with a bunch of youngsters. But there is something about Warnock in the Championship. He can get pretty much any team to click in a way that you didn't think they were capable of doing before he turned up. And you have to give him credit for that.
Well, yeah, I mean, you look at obviously he's been managing for years now, and decades really. And obviously he does have a Football League record of 8 promotions, doesn't he? So he's a bit of a master. You can't really take it away from him, even if he is a bit of a dickhead. But yeah, as you say, Middlesbrough, they were a poor side last year, and I don't think they've done masses really in the transfer market either. So, he's taken the same players, and obviously they're a lot better this year. I know if you have got youngsters, they will improve probably as they gain more experience and that type of thing. But I mean, to be fair to him, as much as we despised it, did do a super job at Cardiff really, because when he went in there, they were in a bad position, and he ended up putting them into mid-table, and then the following year ended up going up with them. And I think he didn't really spend a great deal of money to sort of turn it around. But he just seems to be the master at this level, doesn't he? But then he should, if he was to take Middlesbrough up, the best he could do is probably retire and go out on a high, because as you say, when he's managing in the Premier League, it doesn't seem to work out quite so well for him, does it?
No, but like you said, I mean, what he did at Cardiff was remarkable, because that squad should not have been in the top 2 in the division, really. It wasn't a particularly strong squad, but he made it a strong side and a very difficult one to play against. I mean, if you look at Middlesbrough's stats this season, they are quite predictable for a Warnock team, really. I think they're fourth from bottom in terms of possession and pass completion. They've scored fewer goals than the Swans, and we're not exactly free scoring despite our lofty position. So, I mean, he's not exactly turned them into sort of 1970s Brazil. But they're very, very solid. They're very tough to score against, even though they did concede 3 at the weekend. But in general, they're very, very difficult to score against. They lost 3-2 to Huddersfield on Saturday, but in the, I think, 11 matches before that, they'd only conceded 3 goals. So they're going to be tough to break down, Steve.
Yeah, you would think so when you see it like that. I mean, it's when you consider that and the fact that our defence has obviously been pretty good, it does have the makings of what you would think would be a tight game, doesn't it? And the first goal is likely to be pretty big in terms of deciding who comes away with the points, I would say. So it is going to be a tricky game. I think there's, that's certainly one of the harder games that we've had. You'd expect, and I think if we were to come away with anything, then that would be considered a good result, really, wouldn't it?
Yeah, I'm expecting a game similar to the one against Wednesday, but with more of an attacking threat from the opposition. I think when you look at the team, they've got 2 players who can play as fullbacks, as wingers. So they are, when they don't have the ball, they go into defend in numbers, and they are going to to have players there who can frustrate us. But when they do get forward, I mean, Britt Assombalonga looks like he's finding his feet again after a difficult period where he's not been on form. You've got Tavernier, who looks a very talented young player. Johnson, the left winger youngster, looks like he's having a great season this year. And even players like George Saville and Paddy McNair, players who I've always thought are just dead average, really, really nothing players, really. They seem to be, they seem to be doing a bit more under Warnock, not just defensively, but also contributing in attacks. So, they've got threats going forward as well as a very solid back line. And I mean, Middlesbrough have had 3 0-0s this season, including 2 in their last 5 games. So it is a distinct possibility there's going to be 0-0. But I don't know about you, Steve, but I wouldn't be too upset with a 0-0 from this game.
Well, I'm going to predict a 0-0 because that was what I was thinking basically. But yeah, it would be I think it would be a good result, really, wouldn't it? We couldn't really complain of that one too much. We do that if we were to get a draw there, we'd move on to the Luton game and then be thinking more about winning that one, I'd have thought.
Yeah, I'd have gone for a 0-0 as well. I'll be honest. I just think when neither side is particularly free scoring, it's 2 of the best defenses so far this season coming up against each other as well. At the very most, I think 1 goal will be enough to win this game. It's not going to be a classic open game. That's almost certain, and I'm going to go for a 0-0 as well. Unfortunately, we didn't ask Matt before this podcast for his prediction, but I'd imagine he'll go for a 0-0 as well. But we'll confirm that on the Twitter page if you look back there before the kickoff. I mean, yeah. So we'll move on now from Middlesbrough, who have been one of the surprise packages in the division this season. Challenging for the playoffs after a difficult season last year. We'll move on to Luton, Steve, who started the season very, very well, winning 3 of their opening 4 games. But since then, it's not been quite as impressive, and they've only got 2 wins in the last 10, I think. They've gone 4 games now without the win, including a 4-0 defeat away at Cardiff on the weekend. Now, not a lot of teams go to Cardiff and lose by 4 goals. So, I mean, their form seems to be heading in a bit of a worrying direction from their point of view.
Yeah, it does sound like it, doesn't it? And as you say, to be fair to Nathan Jones, did do very well to keep them up. I think they won 4 of their last 9 games or something, and because they did look like they were in obviously a bad situation and they were quite likely to go down, but they got out of it. And then when they started this season, well, you were thinking, well, they're obviously maybe they're just going to end up with quite a safe finish for this season, but they probably will be a little bit concerned at that run. And obviously, like I say, Cardiff have been pretty uninspiring this season, which is music to all our ears, of course. So to go there and take a pasting, especially when you conceded a couple early on, is probably a little bit concerning, you would have thought. Plus, along with the fact that, as you say, I mean, if it's just 2 wins in 10, then yeah, it's not great. It shows you probably how quickly everything can change in this division, can't it? Because they've had that nice start, then because the games are just literally so relentless. I mean, if you have a bad period or you pick up injuries or anything like that, then you can just shoot down that table pretty quickly. And Luton are going to have to start picking up a few more points, so that's going to happen to them, especially with a hectic Christmas period to come as well in the next few weeks. So yeah, they'll probably be a little bit concerned. But as I said to you off air, Nathan Jones has 2 wins at the Liberty in just over the last year, and he wasn't a manager before that was really struggling to win. So he might not feel too bad coming down here. We certainly need to make sure he goes home with more of a night like when we played Stoke and they ended up with 9 men and we battered them basically, rather than his last 2 visits down here.
Yeah, that's what's got me worried is Nathan Jones's record here. Sometimes you just have these managers who they just find a way of winning against a certain team. They just can always pull a win out the bag against that particular team. And Nathan Jones threatens to be one of those with us. I mean, a real shock result when Stoke came down and beat us 2-1 last season. And the biggest shock was that they really deserved it, and they really did play well and outclassed us, raised their game for that occasion. And then Luton came down and we just battered Middlesbrough 3-0 the previous game, and then they came down and frustrated us and snatched a 1-0 win. I mean, yeah, he knew how to beat us last season, Nathan Jones. And in fairness, he's doing a great job this season too. We said that Luton were on a bad run, but they had such a great start to the season. They've got 19 points on the table already. So, they're a full 7 points clear of the relegation zone, which is fantastic considering very early on last season they were stuck in that relegation zone and couldn't get out and needed a bit of an escape act in the second half of the season to get themselves out of trouble. I'm just wondering, I mean, after the Cardiff match, Jones came out and said that he wished he'd made more changes for that match and hinted that basically the players are getting a bit tired now, that they've played too many games. And we're seeing it up and down the league, Steve. The clubs who maybe don't have that strength in depth, as is the case probably at Luton, they're going to find it difficult now as we enter the colder months. And perhaps a team like Luton is going to, have to accept that their form is going to be up and down quite a bit. And we've just got to hope that we catch them on a good day for us, on a bad day for them.
Yeah, you would think so, wouldn't you? I mean, for someone like Luton, I think if they were to stay in the division, that would represent a good season anyway. So that should be how they're their number one target, at least. I mean, I think it is going to be difficult for a lot of these sides that don't have strength in depth, and I think it is because it is a different season to what we're likely to see. I mean, at any other time in our lifetimes, hopefully, because we won't have another one that's so condensed because of like a pandemic type situation. That I think for a lot of sides, you could argue it's a year where you can make the most of your situation and maybe win a promotion when you're not expecting it. But you could, I think for a lot of sides, it might be just argued that right, finances are tight. We just need to try and make sure that we live to fight another day kind of thing, and then maybe become a bit more aggressive at another time. And I think for Luton, that's certainly the case while they wait for a new stadium as well, because you could see them becoming a bit of a force maybe once they manage to move, because obviously that ground is so small they can't get many in, they can't offer much hospitality or anything like that. But I could see them becoming quite a big side by that stage. But I mean, at the moment, yeah, I mean, as you say, they're not going to be carrying a big squad, unlike some of the other sides in this division. So think inevitably it is going to get difficult, isn't it? And like I say, if you pick up knocks, then if you're playing one game a week, then maybe someone can recover from one, and then it doesn't interfere with the game. But obviously, if you're picking one up now, and then you got a game 3 or 4 days later, it's difficult to shake it off, isn't it? So I just think it is difficult for a lot of sides, really, and quite unique, isn't it, because of this current situation.
Yeah. Looking at Luton's results, their wins have come against Barnsley, Derby, Wycombe, Sheffield Wednesday, and Rotherham. So all teams who are below them in the table. The highest placed out of all those is Barnsley, and they played them right at the start of the season when they were a bit of a mess. They've only taken 1 point against teams currently in the top half. So fingers crossed. That means that they are, flat track bullies, that they'll beat the teams towards the bottom end of the table, but really struggle against the better opposition. But I hope that last season when they came and we lost 1-0 to them at the Liberty, and in fairness, Steve, as well, it should be noted, when we went to Kenilworth Road, they gave us a good game, even though we did beat them 1-0 on the day. They had their moments, there's no doubt about it.
Yeah, I remember with the Kenilworth Road game, was a game I did go to, and I remember in the second half, we really did step up the pressure on them. And you did feel that a goal was going to come. But I think in the first half, they were half decent. But they did have one decent chance, I think, in the second half, where I think Woodman came out and actually missed it. And the guy had an open goal, but it wasn't from a great angle. And it was a bit of a distance out there. Obviously, it didn't result in a goal, luckily. But I mean, they did have some chances in that game. I remember thinking as well, because obviously Graham Jones was in there, a man who we know quite well. And you could tell they did want to try and play like nice football type thing. So I didn't think they were a bad side. To me, they look more like a side, or that obviously they had a couple of promotions in a short period, and maybe they did have players that obviously had been playing in League Two a couple of years before, and obviously the jump is quite a big one then, especially when you think we had players, especially the likes of AU, that have consistently played at Premier League level. So it was going to be difficult for some of those guys then to deal with some of our better individuals. But I mean, they certainly look to play in a nice way, and they would not probably in the worst 3 teams that I'd seen last season, to be fair.
No, definitely not. So yeah, we won't do a prediction tonight for that match. Tune into the Twitter page to see that later on in the week, when we will have witnessed how the Swans have done against Middlesbrough. Just to finish off, Steve, again, it's a very congested season. We're going to be making a lot of changes. You'd expect some players to be rested over the coming weeks. Are there any players who, one, have played a lot of football and you think could do with a rest, either for both of these games or for one of them? And are there any players that we haven't seen much of so far that you'd like to see get a bit more football over the coming week?
I mean, I said about Ryan Manning earlier tonight, for example, and I think he's one that probably deserves a start in the next couple of games, for example. I mean, with the other ones, we touched on Palmer earlier. He hasn't had much of a go, but you think, well, Dander's probably going to come in, for maybe one of the games at least, although I probably wouldn't play Dander at Middlesbrough, as you say, because they're going to be, maybe a bit physical, and it probably isn't a game that sort of suits him. I mean, Gyökeres obviously has had coronavirus, and wish him a speedy recovery. I mean, he hasn't had much of a chance recently, has he? So you'd be looking at him and thinking, well, maybe he could come in, because I think Lowe has played pretty much every game, and he maybe needs to be taken out of the firing line, and he's obviously he's taken a little bit of stick recently. I don't think he's been playing too badly, but his finishing obviously is not maybe as good as we'd like it to be. So he's on, obviously, with Gyökeres, who's unlucky that I think he would have played in the last couple of games, like the Sheffield Wednesday and the Rotherham game. But so when you got the virus, you can't play. We haven't seen anything of Garrick, have we? He was back on the bench, and obviously he's another one that picked up the virus. So sort of think I wouldn't mind seeing him, but at the same time, when you're playing this formation that we've got, it doesn't really suit him. I did think yesterday, we were like, obviously the later the game went on, I was thinking, well, he wouldn't be the worst sub. You just leave him up front and he couldn't play on the break, couldn't he?
Yeah, a bit of speed up front, just trying to chase those long balls, etc. Yeah, I mean, we've barely seen anything of Garrick this season, and obviously he's still very, very young, and just hope that we will see a little bit more of them over this season, and he'll continue his development. But it's going to be interesting. There's no point second guessing who's going to play, because there are so many factors involved, but it'll be interesting to see who does feature over the coming 2 games. And hopefully the Swans can pick up some points, because the following 2 games, Steve, I think we're playing against Bournemouth, who are currently 2nd division, and then the big South Wales derby against Cardiff City. So it would be good for the confidence if we could get a few points over the coming games. Fingers crossed. Join us next week when we'll be looking back over the Middlesbrough and Lincoln games, and we'll be looking forward to those 2 big games that I've just mentioned. Keep an eye out on Twitter as well for various updates. But until then, thank you very much for joining us.